Good morning, BST. My name is Elijah Abdul Sayed. Welcome to today's episode of BST Talks.
Hello, Cowboys. I'm the co-host of this podcast, Darren Chen. Today's episode is about how to manage junior year at BST Academy.
Welcome to junior year. Today, we will interview previous BST juniors about how they were able to conquer junior year in hopes that you will be able to do so as well.
First, we will be interviewing Julie de los Santos, a current BST senior. How are you able to balance the workload of junior year with any other extracurriculars you might have taken or just with life in general?
So personally, I learned that time management and just knowing the times you have for each activity is very important, and organizing it in the scheduling you need in order to be successful. So for example, I was working, I was volunteering, and I was doing sports as well while I was taking all these AP classes, and I figured that if I did volunteering in the mornings and then worked in the afternoons, then it would give me time to do everything I needed in between those hours. And I think just organizing that into your own schedule is really important.
If you could go back and give one piece of advice to yourself as a junior, what will you tell yourself?
I would tell myself not to get behind on any homework. I know it can be stressful, but it would be even more stressful if I kept staying behind, if I didn't do my work, and if I didn't be behind, then I would be less stressed and less frustrated with the amount of workload I had.
What advice will you give for AP laying?
Some advice I would give for AP laying is to make sure that you are studying your vocabulary, just studying how you write, and just keep improving how you write by either talking to your teacher or also just what I found helpful was peer reviewing, and I think that's really helpful because a lot of the times a lot of my friends or a lot of the students in my class would give me really helpful feedback to make sure that my essay or any piece of writing I was doing was understandable by other audiences.
What will you say was your favorite subject as a junior? Why?
My two favorite classes, personally me, was my AP Ling class because I just enjoy writing and reading, but also I loved my elective class, which was AP Environmental Science. We did a lot of fun projects. It was very hands-on, and while the workload was a bit much, it helped me understand what we were learning about, and I just really liked that elective.
Thanks, Julie. Next, we will interview Luke Kiefel. How were you able to balance the workload of junior year with any other extracurriculars you might have taken or just with life in general?
The way that I was able to balance school basically with just leadership, wrestling, and all the different clubs that I did, I would just say is for sure time management, and I would say a big part of it is prioritization. For example, if there was work that was going to be due more immediately, and depending on the size of that work, of course, you do the more immediate work, and then I would work on the bigger things depending on breaking it down into what pieces do I need to complete at this point in time in order to make sure that I would match up with the deadline towards the end. So rather than just doing work as it comes, kind of just being able to plan out, see what do I need to do in order to make sure that I'm keeping up with deadlines, and that I'm keeping myself on track to maintain deadlines in the future for the larger assignments and projects. Other than that, I would just say something that has been helpful for me is also just putting things on my calendar so that I require myself to kind of remember them, and so that things don't slip my mind, especially when dates approach for volunteering or for extracurricular events or just meetings and other things that come up in daily life. If I could go back in time and give myself advice as a junior, I think that the advice that I would give myself is to basically move forward with the different changes in the extracurriculars, keeping in mind that it will actually require me to reshape my schedule, because I think that something that I experienced in my junior year pretty heavily was I picked up quite a few new extracurriculars and activities that I didn't originally account for in my scheduling. So I think that if I could go back, I would tell myself to kind of just be ready for that And if I were planning on picking up more things, or if I knew that I was going to be doing more pressing activities throughout the year that I would have to make sure to kind of keep that in mind, keep in mind that impact and how that will impact me throughout the year, and just make sure to move forward with a plan kind of to organize everything so that doesn't affect me in a way that I don't expect or more significantly than what I had originally planned for.
What advice would you give for AP Physics 1?
The advice I would give for AP Physics 1, for one, is to make sure to do all of the homework that the teacher gives you. I would say that a huge part of that class is really the lecture. I think that that's where you get a lot of the answers, a lot of the secrets, so to speak, for solving different problems and concepts. And I think one of the super, super huge things too is also making sure to ask questions and to clarify things throughout the year, because that was a class where there would be a concept for me from maybe Unit 1 or Unit 2 that I'd still be asking questions about towards the end of the year. So I think the very important thing to keep in mind, especially at that class, is there are going to be concepts that you continue to review throughout the year, and that's okay. The important thing, though, is to not kind of put in a box, so to speak. Like, just because it was in Unit 2 doesn't mean you can only ask about it in Unit 2. Like, always be ready to ask about previous topics, connect to previous topics, what you're learning now, and really just focus on building that foundational base in your knowledge of physics, because you're going to continue to tie back to original concepts as you go forward. And so it's just really helpful to always be asking those tough questions and to ask about those things you're confused about, because it only helps you. And it helps you understand it better. And when you understand the topics better, you perform better, because you can see different situations, and regardless of the question that they throw at you, if you understand the basic concepts behind it, it becomes easy.
What would you say was your favorite subject as a junior? Why is that so?
Well, I would say that my favorite subject as a junior was actually physics, because the class, I feel like the style of it was a lot different than what I had previously been used to. And because of that, I think that it excited me a bit more, because I had to get used to a new teaching format, and I think it was kind of cool being able to build skills and to adapt to that and learn how to take a more lecture-based class and to observe and to practice the skills to build that. I also think that the content itself was very fun and engaging, because a lot of the concepts that you learn in physics are related to daily life and even to phenomenon and subjects that you normally only think of in completely different settings, really, like anything from like black holes to light and things like that. Now, of course, you won't necessarily get into those subjects in the physics class, Physics 1, but it's still really fun to be able to learn some basic concepts that connect to those bigger, more complex topics that people are typically talking about in the field. And not just that, but it's really just a fun science that I feel like you can really show to anybody if you have the right materials and you have the knowledge behind it. Overall, it's just a fun, challenging class, and I think that the skills that are required you to build are really fun to build and applicable, especially in sciences overall.
Thank you, Luke. Now we will interview Kayla Kabandama. How are you able to balance the workload of junior year with any other extracurriculars you might have taken, or just with life in general?
The way which I handle junior year with other activities such as sports, school events, volunteering, is making sure I have a clear schedule and know the different just activities and things I have to do throughout the week. So kind of plan that out the week ahead, just so I know what things I need to do, so I'm able to keep on track with school and turn in all my assignments, as well as attend my extracurriculars.
If you could go back and give one piece of advice to yourself as a junior, what would you tell yourself?
If I could go back and give myself one piece of advice as a junior, I would say to be ready for the different changes that will happen, just because there's a bit of a big jump from the workload from sophomore to junior year, especially with the different types of AP classes that you'll be taking and the different the new different activities which I picked up. So just to be ready for the change in workload.
What advice would you give for AP research?
Some advice I would give for AP research is to make sure to stay on task, and as well as meet every deadline which your teacher set for you, just because it's AP research is a different class from a lot of other AP classes. You're working on your stuff yourself, and you don't really have any partners or anybody else to keep you accountable for your work. Even if you may fall behind, just make sure to keep on track with your own stuff.
What would you say was your favorite subject as a junior and why?
I would say my favorite subject as a junior was A-Push because it was, even though it was a tough workload, it was really fun to do a lot of the assignments and projects which we did in the class, as well as the content. Even though it was a lot of it, it was really fun to learn.
Thanks, Kayla. Lastly, we will interview Sharaf Chaudhry. How are you able to balance the workload of junior year with any other extracurriculars you might have taken or just with life in general?
Hi, Elijah. So, a lot of the way that I was able to balance my workload during junior year was just through keeping a schedule and making sure that I didn't let my assignments pile up. Because when I let them pile up, I would end up having to stay up very late to get them done, and I had noticed I had noticed that in the 2 years prior. So I made it a goal of mine during junior year to be proactive and make sure that I was getting my work done as soon as I could feasibly do it. That way, I wouldn't be letting the deadline stack up. If I still had stuff due, like I still had to do some things a day before the due date, it was still fine because I had the time that I had cleared for myself.
If you could go back and give one piece of advice to yourself as a junior, what would you tell yourself?
If I could give my self as a junior one piece of advice, uh, it would be to ask more questions. I think that a lot of the areas that I struggled were the ones where I didn't think I needed to ask a question. Uh, Whenever I ask questions, I end up getting a better understanding or what I'm misunderstanding about a topic. Because even if I thought I knew something, then when it came to a test, I would just completely mess up that section because I hadn't asked a question and I was going on with the thought that like, oh, I know what I'm doing, when in reality I had this small mistake that ended up being a big part of why I would get those questions wrong.
What advice would you give for AP Chemistry?
For AP Chemistry, the biggest advice I would give is to not focus too much on memorizing the numbers and specific numbers, because there may be like one or two numbers that you need to memorize, but all the other ones will be given to you on a formula sheet on the exam and on any exams in your class. I think that's somewhere where a lot of the people that I would work with would be very caught up on, is like remembering, oh, this constant is this number. But when you're on the AP exam, you need to focus on knowing how to apply that knowledge, not having that number memorized, because it will be provided to you. And as long as you know this number goes into this equation, you'll have a lot easier time on both your tests in that class and the AP test eventually.
What would you say was your favorite subject as a junior? Why is that so?
I think the subject that clicked best with me as a junior was AP Calculus AB. This is because I really like just math in general. And I think the amount of logic that's based in calculus helped in my liking of calculus, because I understood like everything fit together in a sort of way where slope is the derivative is slope and integral is just area under the curve, and I liked that simplicity to how the concepts are taught. Although it's not really simple to get the answers to the questions, if you boil it down to the simplest mechanics, I liked how it made sense.
Thanks for listening, guys. Tune in next time for a new episode.
And remember, be your best at BST.